Hello and welcome to the Pinkbike podcast. My name is Henry, and for any of those people that complain that I don't enunciate and I speak too softly, well, good news. Today I went to the dentist, so it's going to be worse than ever. This one's on the house. I'm joined by Dario and Kaz to talk about all things mountain biking, do some show and tells, and answer some of your questions. Dario, last week you got put in embargo jail for breaking an embargo, and then this week, as your punishment, you've had 17 embargoes all on the same day. Mm-hmm. What's been going on?
We're just getting into the busy season. I think that's really what it comes down to. This is the time of the year when everybody thinks they're first to the punch on releasing new stuff to the market, and as a result, they all happen to do stuff on the same day. So next few weeks are going to be pretty exciting for fans of mountain bike technology. So I think it's great. It's more stuff, but it's also a little overwhelming on my end.
A slight tangent. Is First to the Punch a boxing reference or about a bowl of punch? Is it First to the Punch bowl?
And yeah, you get that delicious cream top on the bowl of punch. Yeah.
The TRP breaks coming out this week would probably be one of the things that grabs a lot of people's attention. I remember I saw that pretty much that exact same lever in Taipei 2 years ago.
Right.
Feels like it's been a little time in the works, and it also looks to address some of the issues with the previous lever, mainly ergonomics. Does it do that?
Yeah, I think it does that simply and successfully. It just makes the range of user fit a lot better than it was before. Previously the TRPs were really good for people with big hands and who liked a long lever reach, but now you can have that and you can bring it closer. I'd be dubious about major claims of them being more powerful. They're like marginally snappier feeling, but for the most part, it is just like an ergonomic change. And then they have that pad adjust dial, which allows you to change the way that the bite point feels. So you can shift between like a really sharp, definite bite point and then a little more of a like soft, maybe modulated bite point, if you want to use that term.
And can you go to the new lever and old caliper, or is it a whole
It is the same old caliper, so yes. But annoyingly, they're not selling it as a lever update. It's just the whole brake. Yeah, which I think is a huge miss for them, but whatever.
Kaz, the last couple of years, I think TRP, and actually I think of Hayes as well, sort of offering pretty good value, maybe not, it's not a value product, but compared to some brakes, and also kind of occupying that fringe character on sort of offering really good performance. How do you see the TRPs shaking up and Hayes? How do you order them in terms of what you like?
I mean, they're both great. I mean, people that don't know, TRP is just an arm of Tektro, which is a massive company. Like they're not a little small upstart company. They're just kind of TRPs, their higher end offering. I like them both. I've been on the new TRPs recently. The last couple of weeks, I got a set on a different bike that is also under embargo. But yeah, I like them, and I think that the TRPs versus the Dominions, the TRPs, the pads don't rattle, which I like. Like really, my only gripe with the Dominions is that the pads rattle a little bit. I really do like the lever feel of the Hayes. It's so light. It's probably the lightest action lever out there. But they're both great options, and like if any bike came with them, I would just keep them on. They're really good, and I think they've got a cult following for a reason, especially the TRPs because they're easy to bleed, mineral oil, a little less expensive than some of the other options. So I think they're on a good track there.
I think the TRPs are more consistent as well. Like the Hayes are quite consistent, but you do occasionally get some wandering of the lever, like over a long run. But the TRPs never seem to change, which is sweet.
What do you think, maybe starting with you, Dario, a couple of years ago, again, when I was in Taiwan, there was a big flurry of talk that TRP was going to try and crack the OE game. They were finally able to offer a full drivetrain and, like really high-end brakes. It came in gold. What else do you bloody want? But they don't seem to have quite done that. Have you had that TRP drivetrain, am I right in thinking?
I still do, yeah. I think I don't pretend to understand the complex economics and politics of OE spec. I think there's a lot more to it than we tend to notice. But the they have decent spec when it comes to brakes. Like Coleman's Hall Specialized, a few big brands have gone to TRP brakes for certain models. I think the drivetrain just isn't good enough to warrant OE spec. So that's just a simple fact. It's like, if it's not very good, why would a brand buy it? As an aftermarket item, it has like things that might appeal to certain users, but ultimately like OEs are making those decisions based on performance and value.
And also I think that, whilst the brakes do have a lot of credibility, like I said, a bit of a cult following, the drivetrain, even though it's been out in the wild for a couple of years, still feels to a degree unproven. And I think if you're ordering 10,000 of them for your sort of breadwinner mid-level enduro bike, it could be feel like a risk. Kaz, how do you have you spent much time on the TRP drivetrains? And if so, what did you think?
Not a lot on the most recent one, but the kind of like the prior generation. Yeah, I just feel like they haven't quite got it right yet. And like you're saying, it's just hard to compete with, even the mid-level offerings from SRAM or Shimano they work really well, and companies can package them. If you're, your company trying to get a deal, you could get a package deal with suspension and drivetrain from SRAM and get some pretty good terms on that. So I think that's where it is. Like Dario was saying, it just doesn't really meet the level. And then it's not actually that much. The price isn't super competitive on their drivetrain stuff. Like it's
not cheap.
It's not cheap. So it's not like they came out with something that maybe you could overlook a little bit of a performance hit if it was really cheap, but it's not. So I think they just haven't found the sweet spot yet for there, but they're still developing things. And I like to see more competition in the drivetrain world. So hopefully they just kind of keep on it and dial it in.
Well, a bit of a sort of a weird question then. Again, starting with you, Dario, and I'll ask Kaz if you want to come in afterwards. TRP haze, I think Manitou in that haze group are doing it to an extent as well. Certain brands manage to offer, not always, but they seem to offer a better value proposition, while it's also having quite a lot of credibility, at least within sort of that core mountain biking audience. When it comes to value to credibility, for instance, there are some brands that offer, have lots of credibility. I don't know, like trick stuff, but obviously they don't aim to be value. And there are some stuff which is maybe a good value, but has zero credibility, and some stuff which has neither. Do you know what I mean? But what are the brands that are really, to your mind, striking a great balance between value and credibility right now?
That's a tough game, because I feel like ultimately the big brands have the overhead to compete best in that game. Like, you can have a loss leader at some price point that allows you to beat everybody with durability and quality and all that stuff. And then you have the like giant dealer network to support things. But I'd have to give that more thought. That would be an interesting matrix to try to build out, but would probably ruffle a lot of feathers as well. I mean, part of it depends on where you live too. It's like, I don't know, support is a flexible thing depending on what kind of access you have to it.
Yeah. Or even depending on the product you're talking about, like if you're talking about tires, like Specialized, massive company, but they do a good job with their tires and have them come in at a good price. Or, suspension, you could look at Suntour. Jessie May just reviewed that Suntour fork last week, and she was pretty impressed with it. It says that a couple little things that keep it from being at the very top tier, but it's also a couple $100 cheaper than like a 38 or a Zeb. So, which obviously Suntour makes some of the things for other suspension manufacturers, so you're just kind of like skipping a step, but so I think that would be an interesting chart or deeper discussion of who is finding that balance between like value and performance.
Yeah, I think committing it to writing could get us in trouble, but if we run over it in a conversation, it might be okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely areas where it's easier to, like you mentioned, tires, that feels like an easy area to talk about it because it's a singular thing. Like suspension gets too complicated, drivetrain's kind of the same, but I think tires are one of those areas where we've had budget brands come out that end up being some people's favorites. Like you get like Delium or Specialized or any of those other like B tier tire brands that aren't necessarily people's first thought when it comes to performance, but they do a pretty damn good job.
Yeah. And it's also a little easier it's also a little easier to experiment with tires. Tires are expensive, but if you get them and they stink, you're like, I kind of wasted some money. But like if you drop $300 to $600 or something on brakes, you're like, oh, I made a mistake and now I'm really sad. So that's probably why it's so easy to rate certain things.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, by comparison, like for instance, like the one-up dropper has seemed to always occupy that good spot, and then it's made to look better comparison by quite, to my mind, expensive wireless options coming out. And you just think like this one's got a lower stack. It's maybe half or a third of the price for like the
and
older
it's
version.
lighter and it's more durable and it's I mean there are plenty of things like that where buying the ridiculously expensive option is not the right choice.
Yeah, so true.
You know.
What else you had come out in embargo land this week, Dario? We've seen Helmets from Smith.
Podcast comes out Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've got 2 exciting ones on Thursday. We've got the lightest mountain bike wheel set ever, I think. The new Roval, the 26 inch. I guess caveat lightest 29-inch mountain bike wheel set. Roval's new World Cup. I have so many things in my head right now. What is the Control World Cup? Yeah,
the World Cup shit wheels.
Control World Cup XC wheels. They are 991 grams for a wheel set.
And that's for
both of them.
For both of them, Henry. Yeah,
that's 26 inch. Get a measuring tape.
It's so fucked up. Like I have had numerous occasions where I pick them up in my shop and like my hands do the jump higher than my shoulder thing because I'm so used to picking up heavy wheel sets. But
how?
They have carbon spokes. There's only 20 spokes per wheel. They have custom hubs that are like the width of your pinky. They are so fucked up. They're really cool. And they are rideable. Like I have ridden them on normal mountain biking trails and they're not scary. I wouldn't go race an enduro on them, but like, I that's kind of how I feel is like, and it's in the article, like they're one of the few things I've had recently where it like, it changed the way I thought about a category. Like,
because the last ones were
like 1150 or something.
Yeah, they were really like I rode those and was like I wouldn't want to ride things much lighter but they worked. I rode them for a good few months and put them, rode them on things that would be as hard or harder than you ever do on a cross country bike, and they just kept working. So I don't know how they shaved 100 grams off
the rim.
28. Do you know?
Well, I think it's 28 to 30. I have to check my notes, but I believe 28. It's so like a normal rim meant for 2.3 to 2.4 tires, which they have like a new tire lineup that comes along with the rim. Yeah, they're fucking crazy. It's really cool. Like
that's what? Yeah, that's like road weight almost.
Pretty much. I mean, you're approaching like durable road wheels.
Stuff. Yeah.
I
mean, road wheels
like,
aren't even
like a pair of Zip Firecrests are like 13 something. Like they're by a margin heavier than these.
Wow.
Yeah, they're crazy. They're pretty cool.
Okay, so can I just say, right? I always complain about bikes being too light. But if when you get a trail bike and yada yada yada, and it's too light and it just breaks, not into it. But to make something at the very pinnacle of XC racing, that light is genuinely amazing. Yeah.
I agree.
Really, that is really cool.
Yeah. And it gives you room. If you're an XC racer, it gives you room to do other things. You can add some weight with like your dropper post or like it can
not take a shit.
Yeah,
Don't worry
exactly.
About it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can actually have some. Yeah. So it's exciting.
I think like it opens up a realm of possibilities of like other tuning methods because with like cross country races getting a bit gnarlier, I think tire choice will become a bit more diverse in terms of what people choose to run. And if you're saving that much weight on wheels, you can start to run a heavier tire that manages certain things better. So it's pretty cool.
Have you hit the rim much?
I rimmed out. I'm running like low XC pressures with light tires, and so you get like the occasional soft bottom out on the tire, but nothing aggressive yet. I haven't ridden them a ton just because I've only had them for a little bit, but they make some noises but I would say honestly nothing like other heavier cross country wheels I've ridden. Like it's the sound of a wheel deflecting, not like a scary twangy spoke noise, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's a whole wheel set for the same weight as an XO Plus tire. One XO Plus tire.
Yeah, that's a good reference point too. It's like, like with tires on, they weigh like what some of my downhill tires weigh. It's it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
That's super cool.
That's a
We've
cool
actually
one.
fucking done it. We've finally got good show and tell. It's only taken us 6 months.
Yeah,
We're going to tell you about my multi-tool.
Yeah. I mean, this is why this season of the year is exciting, because it's when people are dropping their like hot shit, that
Yeah.
especially with this, it's like, before XC race season starts, they can kind of blow some minds and scare people before the races come, because honestly, this is one of those things that, like, psychologically, if you're going to the start line on a wheel set that's like 400 to 500 grams heavier than these, I bet that plays some role in like how you think about the race, which is,
Yeah, you're gonna want.
I mean, it's annoying, but
yeah, you'll ask your sponsor like, "Where's your sub 1,000 gram wheel set?"
Yeah, and I was doing research like before
shocked.
writing this, looking for other like crazy light wheel sets, and there are others out there. Like you can find some boutique, unusual things, but realistically, like this is so extreme in the market that there aren't that many competitors. So it's cool to see something like that, because we don't get those that frequently, where you're like, wow, this is genuinely different than anything that we're used to. So
I'm just going to go and cut and remove every fourth spoke from my wheels. So 20 is the magic number.
20's it. Yep.
Yeah.
Sick.
And yeah, like
Just
with
drill your
that
hubs a
few
little bit.
spokes, you get some crazy deflection as well. So they are like quite comfortable. Yeah.
Comfortable.
I mean, it's like comfortable / loose, but you're riding them on XC tires on an XC bike.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I hope no one's buying these to like, put on an enduro bike.
Yeah,
but
they are
somebody
carbon
will.
spokes too. Like they're hollow carbon spokes. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
yeah.
Wow.
So I've got those. That's a cool thing. I guess kind
That
of
is cool.
underwhelming in tandem. There's the new Hydra hub. So Industry 9 redesigned their super high engagement hub. It's got 870 points of engagement now. So that is another market leader in a different category, but
Wait, what did it have before?
Sorry.
690.
Oh,
So a lot. It went from a lot to a lot. It's not the point of that though wasn't to increase the engagement. It was to improve durability. So those Hydras had, I'd say, like a pretty poor track record with durability, and they've done all the right things to try to mitigate that. So they're cool.
That's like 0.3.
0.41 degree, I believe. Yeah. I mean, it's instant, like for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And they're still pawl driven. They use like more teeth per pawl and a bigger drive ring. So they're a bit more stiff and resistant to flex, which is why the axles were breaking in the previous ones. Bearings should be more durable. They're doing a lot of things right when it comes to like improving on the prior design, but still using all the like novel tech that they had prior.
I've got to admit, I'm actually, so full disclosure, doing a video with i9 talking about basically sort of how a hub works as a general thing. And I knew everything. I didn't realize it was going to that high number of engagement though. They said it had, I just assumed that 690, whatever, was still.
Yeah. It's not really the like,
adequate.
it's not their main point with them. I think the durability and the lower drag is the bigger claim.
Are we going to get, but hold on, if you had the Hydra hub on the Specialized wheels, you're nearly at a point of engagement per gram.
That's how we can start measuring stuff like that.
But then you'd lose you'd climb in grams quite a bit.
But then we need to get more engagement.
It's crazy looking at like a normal mountain bike, like the Hydra, for instance, like next to these Roval hubs, because the Roval hubs have like nothing in them. They're just like a spindle and then like a little ratchet around that. There's nothing there. It's crazy. They are a little spooky, but they do the job.
Do you think we'll ever get some wheels that are so compliant and soft and light or whatever that they don't actually need the through axle, and they'll realize you can go lighter if you put like a
Go back to quick releases.
proprietary small... I don't know, but no, maybe not quick release, but maybe something... Yeah, kind of like
maybe like a solid 9mm
Yeah.
bar of steel.
I'm being serious though. Like, because if it could knock off stuff and make it smaller, and your wheels are going to feel like a waterbed anyway, why not?
Maybe.
Treat
I
yourself.
feel like the issue is you can't control the variables quite as tightly. Like by making the compliance come from the outer diameter of a wheel and the like constituent parts connecting that to the hub, you can tune the system a bit better. But if it's coming all from just the fulcrum it sits on, it's harder to control.
I look at it the other way, Dario. Imagine if you're a wheel manufacturer, people blaming you for things breaking, and then you can make the frame break instead. That's a great deal.
Yeah. Translate everything into someone else's problem. You just push it off.
Yeah.
Mate, frame manufacturers have been doing it enough with shocks.
I mean, that's what everyone was afraid of with the transmission direct mount stuff. They thought it was going to take all the like derailleur brakes and make the frame break instead. But no, it turns out you can still break a derailleur. It's just a different part.
Yeah.
I can't believe we've actually got a good show with good tech. I'm very uncomfortable.
That's going to be the title. It's like we finally did it first time. Yeah.
It should be good for the next little bit. There's lots of good stuff coming out. So even looking further down.
Oh, there's a ton. Yeah. It's a cool year.
Not bad.
Yeah, those two are. I mean, the wheels are crazy. The Hydra stuff is cool. Like, yeah. In a way, the wheels are easy to write about because it's like, oftentimes we're kind of parsing out differences between things. This is just like, hey, lightest mountain bike wheel set ever. They're fucking crazy. Like, it's pretty cool. I mean, they're not like the end all be all by any means, but for like that sect of racing, it is.
Oh yeah, but also think about riders that are maybe instead of 80 kilograms, 75, 80 kilograms are 55 kilograms.
Yeah.
Suddenly, they will benefit a lot more from that light wheel set.
Plus your bank account's $3,000 lighter. So your bank account's not heavy anymore either. So
fuck me.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Kaz, speaking of light, expensive bikes that are potentially not fun to ride, how are you getting on a road bike field test? Talk us through it.
Well, that's not, that could be my show and tell, but I have other things for show and tell, but for people that no one would actually know. So if you're listening, you didn't know this, but I'm currently helping out.
Oh God, what a sentence. Wordsmith you.
I know, I'm just really good here. It was different in my head, but I'm down in California for a few days because the Velo team, they're doing a road bike field test. So I'm just kind of helping them out, help produce things and make sure that it goes smoothly. It's interesting.
Are you just there at the sideline saying, no fence sitting?
Exactly.
No fence sitting.
I'm just heckling. They just roll by and I yell things at them.
Nice.
But you can't yell like do a wheelie or a bunny hop or anything.
No, there's not as many things.
What's their equivalent? Like,
it's hard because even the place we're staying has a little curb like to get back into the driveway, and it's actually a sharp enough curb. You have to be careful getting in the driveway, so they can't just come like ripping in and skidding because like they could potentially pop a tire or break a wheel or whatever. So it's a different world. But there's cool bikes. Yeah, I mean, like road bikes these days are actually pretty sweet. They have they don't weigh anything, and they have through axles and they have disc brakes, and geometry's gotten better. I mean, geometry hasn't changed so radically with road bikes, but it is a lot more comfortable play. So it's interesting.
I remember one time me and my sister had this argument talking about, I can't remember, I think it was like Bradley Cooper and like, I don't know, fucking Jake Gyllenhaal or something. We were both talking about different films, about how they were just terrible Oscar bait with a crying, attractive white man in, and he was just giving it his all. And it turns out after 20 minutes, we realized we're talking about different films. You know how like all celebrities, they become so like juiced up and glamorized and stylized, they all begin to look the same. I feel like that's the same with road bikes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not actually testing the bikes for anyone that was worried. I'm not a roadie, but this is just doing some more production stuff. But there is someone down here who people will know. We've got Mike Levy here, and he's
no way.
Yeah, he's here. So it was good to reconnect with him. He's gonna kind of help. He's gonna be the host of that because Levy, for people also that don't know, he's way into gravel these days and dabbling more with the skinny tire side of things. So. He's been he got here a week early and just been crushing out lots of big rides and stuff. So
wow,
good to see Levy.
Nice. Did he have to take a taxi back, or did he actually manage to complete the loop on his field test gravel ride?
He did. Let's see. He's finished. Well, he did have a fork. No, his fork broke, but like he has an upside down fork on his gravel bike and it broke, but it's still going.
Oh, wow.
It just sounds like a tin can full of coins. But
did the damper blow?
Yeah, something inside it. We got to work on it. I don't know.
Okay.
But so it's good to hang out with Levy and some other characters here that we've worked with in the past, so it's gonna be a good little bit. But then I'm excited to ride dirt and mountain bikes soon because that's what I love.
Yeah,
it feels like spring.
Yeah, there's lemons on trees. Lemons grow on trees here in this place I'm at. Yeah, we bought a lemon squeezer so we can make some lemonade because the house has a lot of sugar in it, so we're gonna make lemonade.
There you go.
Yeah.
When life gives you sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
Family fun.
I know it's gonna be amazing, but then I go back and ride mountain bikes. My show and tell.
So have you got a nice multi-tool? Yeah, go on.
Yeah. It's really tiny. It's made by a tiny Swiss company. No, I don't have a multi-tool this week, but I have that the Vorsprung Tellum Shock. That review goes up.
Cool.
Yeah, so by the time this airs, the review should be up. So that thing's
what do you think?
Cool. It's good. They did a great job. Like it's there's really nothing, I don't think it needs to be changed on it. Like it has the adjustments work well. They're tuning, like the actual, for people that aren't familiar with, well, Vorsprung, most people have probably heard of. They started out kind of like a suspension tuning company, and they were doing little aftermarket hop-up kits like for your fork and things, but now they finally made their own shock that's made in Kamloops, BC. And really what's neat about it is it's fully custom. So you go through like the ordering process, but in a lot of companies, you just give them the bike you're going to put it on and your weight. But this one, they ask you things like your strength to weight ratio and your riding style, but even like pretty detailed. Like it goes very, I don't like the word.
Do they ask for like a video of you riding as well?
Yeah, you can upload a video of you riding if you'd like. So it's really detailed, but I think that helps them get a good tune, because ideally their goal is that the shock just shows up, you bolt on your bike and you ride without even touching like it at all, and that's what I did. And like the tune they arrived at for me was really close to my preferences. So I think it's a good testament. And you can also, the way that the shock is designed, if you did need a different tune, like a fully different tune, if the say you switched to a different bike, or if you gained a ton of weight, or just your riding style changed a lot, you can revalve it without pulling it all the way apart. The way that the system works, like it's a solid piston, and so all the damping happens in the reservoir bridge. So they have a way that they can adjust the pivot point of the shims, and that way you can basically stiffen or soften the shim stack without pulling the whole thing apart. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, it worked well. It's super quiet too, which I like. I don't like noisy shocks, and it doesn't top out, which is one thing I feel like even name brand coil shocks, a lot of them still have that tendency to top out sometimes on like smaller lift ups, and it doesn't do that. So yeah, I'd say it's one of my favorites.
Did you have the opportunity to do the revalve thing?
I didn't, because there's no need to, because like I had a wide enough range. So like I looked at, I looked at they have a nice little instructional video of how to do it. It wouldn't take long at all. And it's just like tiny tool to do it. So it's cool. I don't think most riders will end up using that unless you do switch bikes. I even had another bike I was going to switch it to, and I plugged in all the parameters hoping that it would be a different tune, and the tune it spit out was the same one I had already. So like, oh, well, it wouldn't, cool. I didn't have a bike that it would have been a drastic enough change to need a revalve, but I think the feature is cool. And it comes with a spring deck spring on it too. So really it's high end, but I think that kind of like lives up to the hype, I'd say.
What, compared to the Push Industries you tested last year, both North American made boutique shocks, what would you go for?
I like the Push better, like the SV8. Just I think that the way that tune felt and I've been testing all these shocks on the Ramadan. I've had like probably 5 coil shocks on that bike in the last year or so. Like there is something about the way that Push feels. It's just a little bit kind of like lighter without being mushy. Shock reviewing is always hard to like put into words, but there is something about the way that the thing gets out of the way. Just like it feels a little quicker, a little more livelier maybe than the Tellum. Obviously you could retune the Tellum, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get to quite match the Push, but it's super close. Like either one of them, realistically, all of the shocks that I've been testing lately, I would be happy with any of them on the bike. It's not like, oh, this one's horrible, but like in the video, I just held up the 2 shocks and I put the Push like just like a little bit above the Tellum if I had to like put them on a graph. But and that Push, the SV8 is a little bit cheaper, but it also doesn't have a climb switch, which some people like the climb switch on their coil shock. And the Vorsprung's climb switch it's a good one. Like it doesn't fully lock it out. It still allows a little bit of movement, so you don't just like get super jarred. And you can even ride trails with it locked out, and it's fine. It's got to blow off. And I think they did a good job. Like it's for their first shock, it's pretty impressive that they made it. Like
seriously,
it comes out pretty pretty dumb.
Is there any connection to the We Are One thing in Kamloops? Is that why did they go there? Do you know?
I don't know.
I think it's cheaper real estate.
Yeah, I think probably manufacturing capabilities of that town. And I think they, as far as I know, they kind of split off their suspension tuning. They sold it. I think it's called like S4 suspension now in Whistler. Like it's a different. I'd imagine it was just because of a better place to more affordable manufacturing kind of zone. But yeah, it seems cool.
I think it's super cool because I think they did some really great. Is it Steve? That's the guy's name, right?
Steve Matthews.
Yeah. He did really great videos for years. Sort of not. He definitely wasn't like disparaging. I think he was like always really insightful, really knowledgeable. But at the same time, he would be happy to say, we've seen a lot of these failures. We've seen a lot of this, and really help you sort of like paint a picture of the type of failures that certain design traits can lead to.
Yep. Yeah.
And
I love the Tuesday tune stuff.
Get involved in the manufacturing of it. When it kind of, I don't know, entering the race, I think I got a lot of time for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And even the release of the shock, they kind of had videos that explain the details. I even included one in my review because I couldn't have done a better job of explaining it. Like they went, they kind of like pull it all apart, and it's so free of fluff, which is really refreshing, because so many times a product comes out and you don't want to even touch the company's marketing video because it's just like, game changing, like quiver killing, whatever. But this is just like Steve just describing, like, hey, we did this. We're not the first, but we just know that this is what we wanted. And it's it's just kind of nice how straightforward he is. I appreciate the bluntness. It's good.
Yeah, me too.
Does it have a hydraulic bottom mounter in there?
It does. Yeah. It's adjustable.
Yeah.
So it's like basically like the kind of a cup in a cup design. So at the end of the piston, it's a solid piston, so there's no valves. But at the end of the piston, there's like a little cup that goes into another cup at the top of the shock. And then you can adjust the volume in there. So that's like the last 15 millimeters of the stroke, I believe. And then I think if you shorten it by a little bit, it doesn't change. You can change the stroke length, and it doesn't affect the hydraulic bottom out to a certain extent. If you go with a longer stroke length change, then it affects it. But it is adjustable, a bunch of clicks. And so it kind of has everything you'd want from a coil shock, I'd say.
I think we're all on coil shocks for our enduro bikes now, hey?
I'm testing some air stuff right now, but primarily, coil shock. I'm still running that orange block Neo shock on my frameworks.
Yeah, I like how they
of course, yeah. No.
Kind of depends on the bike, but yeah, for
Well,
that
isn't
ROM,
that
it feels
nice?
good. Yeah.
Well, this is just great. Guys, you've done a great job. I am absolutely, I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm
Unprecedentedly high
blown away.
quality.
I cannot believe.
Yeah.
Holy shit. I don't know what to say. I'm very proud of you both.
Thanks,
I think you
Henry.
Really
Thanks.
take the afternoon off, lads.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Nice. We go to the donut shop.
Yeah. Should we get into some, unless anyone's got, I know there's some Smith helmets, that's kind of small revisions maybe.
Yeah, that would kind of
Dario?
Yeah, new helmet.
I don't know. They're new. And honestly, like the half shell one's kind of disappointing for the price, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah,
but,
fair.
Yeah.
Well, hey, cool. Well, this is just great. I'm genuinely lost for words.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some questions. I'll try and collect myself, and we'll get into it.
Hey guys, love the show. Michael here from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Just a quick question about your thoughts on tuned mass dampers. I normally ride cross-country trails and stuff, but I do go to the bike parks quite often. I have family that lives just outside of Asheville in North Carolina, so in the Pisgah Forest quite often, in the parks around there. And I have issues with my hands after having a couple surgeries on both. Plates have been installed, screws, everything like that. So on long descents, I do have some hand fatigue and almost some numbness. I try to work out as much as I can. I'm pushing 50, but I've also been rebuilt. So I've tried carbon bars. I didn't like them. After crashing and nicking one of them, I'm like, I'm never doing that again. I didn't feel like they really made a difference that I could tell. But definitely not looking for tenths of seconds or winning races. It's literally just so I can enjoy my riding a little bit more with my condition. So your opinion on that would be greatly appreciated. Don't know if you played with these things just yet, but it is something that kind of has me interested, especially with RimPact having that head tube, that steer tube version coming out as well as the other bolt-on one. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's such a nice point. Like, for comfort, not just some ultimate World Cup speed tracking, but a tuned mass damper could potentially offer that. Does anybody want to sort of speak to what this view is sort of getting at?
I think that there are things you could do before resorting to trying that. And I say resorting to because honestly, like the tuned mass dampers aren't super proven out yet. I think we're only seeing them recently on the World Cup where they've kind of addressed all their other wants and needs, and they're trying to, stabilize for those tenths, hundredths, thousandths of seconds. I think playing with A, make sure your tire pressure is good. B, make sure your fork is set up in such a way to like handle the bumps that you're hitting with it, which sounds vague, but like depending on your weight and riding technique and stuff like that, like make sure that you've set your fork up in a way that helps you. And then I think there are other products that might be as influential, if not more, those being like certain grips that seem to do a pretty good job of isolating, be it like foam push-on grips or those rev grip things seem to work for some people, or the fast flex bars, those like elastomer bars. I haven't personally tried those, but it seems like some combination of all those very flexible things could help kind of isolate your hands and wrists a bit better.
He mentioned Rimpact there. What came to my mind initially was not all inserts feel the same.
He meant the Rimpact 2 mass damper.
I know, sorry. Yeah, sorry. He said Rimpact, which then made me think of inserts. Sure. But totally. And not all of them feel the same. And I would say the Panzer and actually the Tannis insert, not the inner tube system insert, but that were actually really comfortable. Maybe not the most in terms of if you want to, rail through corners and like absolutely, smash through. But in terms of comfort, that Tannis, like I said, it felt like you get more stroke of the tire. And that's something that might be a bit cheaper as well.
Yeah,
the mass damper thing is super exciting here, Kaz.
Yeah, and we have some on test. I think Sebstat has some, so we'll have some answers and that. Hopefully answers to people's questions soon. But yeah, I haven't tried one either, so I can't speak on how well they work. But I think, like Dario said, I would try those rev grips and maybe some different inserts and maybe different tires.
Yeah, I have a
too,
friend
just to,
who's
take
got
the edge off.
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally and limited anecdote, but like a friend of mine up in Squamish, you guys know Will, I think, but he's got like 3 of the however many dozen bones you're supposed to have in your wrist, and it's all fused up and fucked up, and he swears by those rev grips, and it seems to, I mean, it's one person again, but I do think it makes sense. Like they might have a downside when it comes to other performance things like hand stability on the bars and stuff, but
they don't really move that much. Like I've used them before, but they move it, but it's not like crazy. It doesn't feel like you're full throttle gripping. So
throttling,
I think those things to kind of like isolate yourself a little bit could be useful. But the inserts could be good.
Cool. Well, I think that's I think that the only one I think of was actually, and this is not something I recommend just because of the price, but those bird wheels with the string spokes.
Oh yeah,
are very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that gets to
those radial tires too. People are sick of us talking about them, but like 12V radial tires, they just do feel more comfortable. So like something like that, some combination of all those different things, kind of depending on how much you want to spend, you could probably get a pretty super comfy bike.
If we think of the most comfortable handlebars we've ever ridden, not going into too many brand names or too many specifics, do you think they're more likely to be carbon or alloy? Starting with you, Kaz.
I think for me, they're probably carbon, but like I'm not somebody that's super sensitive to handlebar stiffness. Like I notice when they're way too stiff, like some of those one-piece bar stem things that are crazy stiff, but otherwise I don't, it doesn't usually bother me that much. I don't know if that's because I just don't really have too many, luckily, knock on wood, like wrist or hand problems, but I'd say if I had to think of the most comfortable carbon bars I've tried, I would say, or most comfortable handlebars I've tried, they were carbon. But
nice.
Yeah, we do actually. I should mention we do have a test eventually, hopefully sooner than later, coming out where we did some vibration testing with handlebars. So we should have a list and some rankings and things in the near-ish future once the scientists are done calculating the data. But they actually happened in a lab of some sort, and it's happening hopefully. And then I don't know when, but hopefully sooner than later. So look for that.
Well, I'm actually sat in right now that lab that outside were building us like 5 years ago. It doesn't look like a lab, but I can assure you that it is. All the equipment's behind me.
The posters are put up in a very scientific manner.
Dario, what would you say?
I'm kind of same as Mike, where I'm not tremendously picky about the feel of my handlebars. I tend to like 31/8 aluminum bars. Like that is my go-to.
The people's choice. Because people love that. That's what everyone wants. They're like, they're the best ever.
I know.
35 was made by the man to keep you down. Don't go 35.
Yeah.
You're like,
and let it be known, I think that people who like deem 35 mil bars unrideable are full of shit. Like, just suck it up.
Plus, they've been out for so long now. Like 35s when they first came out. I mean, how long ago is it? It's like almost 15 years ago.
A decade, 15 years. Yeah.
Right.
I realized I was so naive to think the coarsening of American conversation hadn't also reached handlebars. Fuck you, man! You're on 35. You don't know what I'm talking about.
This is mine.
We can turn anything. We can turn anything into a hateful issue. Trust me. Yeah. I get the frustration with there being like this oversized bore that then is fought to get more compliance in, but like it does other things well, and I understand that for some people it's just an aesthetic choice of like it looks better on bikes with big tubes. So whatever, we've got choices.
I think some stems end up looking like reconstituted house bricks. Just
That is
like,
true.
Like so fat. Yeah.
fucking, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm a 31.8 boy through and through. Just playing to the crowd. Get my fan mail straight into me. Alloy bars, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Speaking truth to
comfortable.
power.
They're
Yeah.
durable. They
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
should say that I'm not against them either. Like that is what I have on some of my
Oh,
bikes.
wow,
and it's fine.
softening now, help me, Kaz.
No, I don't want
Jesus.
to. All of a sudden, like the 31.8 people are going to be throwing old handlebars at my house or
You're like,
something.
oh, Mike's part of the cabal.
Yeah. No, buy what's
I,
comfortable for you, and like obviously the sweep and all that matters too, for your wrist comfort. But there's options out there for a reason.
Yeah, when I was testing bikes, I'd often have like not control bars, but handlebars I knew fit me if I was struggling with a bike. And I always would lose track of like what bikes had what life, if you see what I mean. And I liked alloy bars just because I knew that I didn't have to worry about, that bar's been on a downhill bike, so probably don't want to put them, those are the ones that might snap at some point because they had that, would always lose track. So yeah, alloy bars through and through. Wow. Tell you what, this is just excellent, guys.
Doing great.
Some good consumer advice. I am taken aback.
trying.
Right, next question.
Hey, Pinkbike. I've been listening to you guys for a bit, and sometimes I feel like I've got a good grasp on what's going on tech-wise in the NTB community, but then you guys have some podcasts that make me rethink everything, so I got a few questions. First off, for tire inserts, I know we were talking about that those are out for the season. In your guys' perspective, I live in Denver, Colorado, and I go to Moab once a year with friends. I'm about to do some like local races this summer. I'm just wondering, in this rocky environment, is Cush Core a good idea on my enduro bike? Secondly, tires.
I think if you're racing, put them in just for security, no?
Yeah, but don't constrain yourself to one brand. There's a lot of good options out there, and you can read about all those options on pinkbike.com.
Yeah. It kind of depends what you're looking for. Sometimes for safety wise, but even then though, if you're running downhill tires, I don't really think you need Cush Core.
Yeah, I will say a lot
Some
of
people have a
racers
gift
don't run inserts. But yeah, Henry's right. Like some people managed flat and or brake wheels.
Yeah. And you
on
can always stick it.
anything.
You can always just run it one in the rear if you need to, just like for the like, safety.
I think if it's downhill racing, I would go probably no Cush Core because you know the track, you get to kind of understand what things are happening, and also you haven't got a whole day ruined.
Yep.
But if you're doing multi-stage races on the first blind stage, for instance, you then don't even have a nice day of riding to look forward to if you cook a rim. So that would be my.
Yeah. I kind of like, I mean, can be expensive experiment, but like if this person has been to Moab a few times, try it without your Cush Core and see if you survive the weekend. And then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
true.
It's hard to, I mean, obviously you want people to not have issues. So Cush Core does, or something similar. Inserts can help prevent issues if you are riding more rocky terrain. But these days,
I want to
think
hear the
downhill casing works really well for a lot of people.
I want to hear the second half of the question.
Okay,
Yeah.
off we go. Hit and play now.
You guys did the blind tire test, which I thought was a pretty interesting test, but I just thought the conclusion of the test maybe was somewhat lacking so far as like what tires should we get, or should we just stick with what we know best. I got some Continental tires sitting in my garage that are going to go on my enduro bike this spring, but I'm just wondering, man, do I need to put some Schwalbe radial casing tires on that bike now? And lastly, I thought the Fox 38 versus the Zeb.
Oh, bloody hell's
He's
teeth.
touching everything. I thought this was all like one related topic.
Yeah, no, it's good. We confused him, so we have to help him out of his confusion.
To wrap on
our
the
fault.
insert, to wrap on the insert thing, I think you can always simulate or try to simulate the terrain you're looking to ride at home. Like, like Denver area, there are rocky trails with, square embedded things. You could go ride those as if you're on your trip to Moab and see if you flat or break a rim. It doesn't have, there's nothing specially gnarly or rough about that one town in Utah. It's a replicable
you could
experiment.
Maybe hit the tanning salon beforehand so you get that just perfect level of sunburn for the full
Yeah.
and then go riding and see how you cope.
Back of your neck. Yeah.
In regards to that blind tire test, I think the big takeaway was that, how to put this, the tires are actually pretty bloody good now. There was a time we couldn't always say it, but if it's really hard to split hairs, honestly, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think there are going to be some that suit some people more than others and preferences, but out of those 5, if you find one that you like, run it.
Yeah.
And if you find one that's cheaper, run it.
Yeah, he says he has those Continentals, which those I found that for a softer tire, I don't know which ones he has, but if he has the downhill super softs, they do last a surprisingly long time for a softer rubber tire. So especially if he's riding more rocky trails, I think Continentals are good for that. Like their rubber just lasts longer, and even when it wears out, it's still pretty rideable. So that's for durability. I think Conti's doing something good with their rubber.
Yeah,
but
sorry, I just to touch on the Contis in that blind tire test, as Matt mentioned in the test, because they were fresh, Conti puts like a weird shell compound on them for shipping, and they always get grippier after a ride or two. So that probably plays a role into like how they stacked up in the end, but it's a hard thing to control for,
or they weren't as good and he had to find a reason to attribute it to after.
Fair enough. Yeah.
They're being so popular.
Yeah. I'm of the mindset of like, if you have them and you like them, believe in that and they will be the best tires you've ever ridden, like, that makes a big difference.
You're comfortable. But yeah, I think that,
I
mean, for Denver, I don't know what tires I'd run. Like the radials are great, but they may feel a little bit too vague if you're riding more hard pack, like really firm things. You just might need to run more pressure. Depends how much you weigh, that type of thing. Like they've been amazing here in the Pacific Northwest, but that's because we have more kind of rooty, softer ground. And like, I love them. They're my favorite tires that I've ridden in a long time. But for somewhere like deserty, hard packy, I might be more likely to put the Contis on, or just, the tried and true Askai DHR2 from Maxxis combos. Hard to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, let's get on to assuming the final part of this question. It's got 26 seconds. See if we can sneak to it.
Review was pretty helpful. I know you guys mostly contrasted like the Zeb 3 to the Zeb 3.1 and to the Fox 38, and I was just wondering, I've got the Zeb 2.1 with original RC on my Enduro bike, and I'm just wondering, is it worth going from the 2.1 to the 3.1 RC2, or is it fine just staying as is? It's a big investment, or maybe just getting the new damper. Let me know. Bye.
Zeb 2.1.
Zeb, he has so I think that he means he has like
first generation Zeb, it would be.
So like, would that be, no, that'd be second gen,
the
right?
2021 Zeb, I think. No, I think it'd be the first.
Okay, so
gen.
Original air spring.
Yeah. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but like, I think by the time the Type 2.1 came out, it went, like the top line fork at the time it went into was that red lyric. And then subsequent, I guess in about 2019, I think in 2020, 2021, the Zeb came out.
He might, if you're trying to upgrade something, he might get that thing that we announced today, that ratio components, the little top cap that gives you more air volume in there. Because that original Zeb, like the first gen Zeb, was really hard to bottom out, like almost impossible. And that one with the little thing, there's also MRP who makes one too. I can't remember what it's called.
The Noken.
Yeah, so the Noken, either one of those, they're not crazy expensive, and they do give you a little bit more.
Do you know how I know the first generation Zeb is really hard to bottom out? Because I went to Prevo with Matt Beer and did this road gap, which is quite big for little old Huck and Henry.
That's Huck and Henry era, yeah.
Yeah, and it was so big that I kind of like got a bit nervous and like pulled up the front. And I stapled the ground so hard. I did probably 20 meters on my front wheel alone after bottom out the fork. And didn't bottom out the fork. I was like 5 minutes off.
Yeah. So
wow.
I think one of those before a damper, because that damper worked fairly well. It's hard to
to me the bigger difference Gen 1 to Gen 2 Zeb is the air spring, not the damper. They improved that.
Yeah, I tried the Noken or the ratio components thing. I think they're less than $100 maybe.
They're 70.
Yeah, so I think that could be a good thing. They'll give you a different feel, something to experiment with without needing to spend tons of money, because then you might be just looking for an entirely new fork in a season or two, depending on how you upgrade things.
Well, I think we hopefully clarified. We brought him back from the brink. He understands what we're talking about a bit better now.
Yeah.
Sweet. Let's go on to the next one and confuse and contradict everything we've just said.
Hey, Pinkbike crew. It's Riley from Oregon, and my question today is about high pivot bikes and if they're just a fad. I have a lot of friends who are switching over to the high pivot platform, whether it's the Common Soul Supreme or even the Forbidden for a trail bike. My question is, are they a fad or are they something that we actually need? You have factory teams like Specialized, Santa Cruz, and Frameworks, Yeti for the enduro side, all winning on low pivot bikes, yet the bike industry sells us high pivot bikes. Are they something we need, or maybe should we be focusing on suspension setup and spring rate, things like that to maybe negate
I mean-
the disadvantages of a low pivot. Let me know what you guys think.
I mean, I don't want to be too sort of. I mean, I think it's a fair question, but you can have both. You can have a high pivot with a good spring rate and a good damper.
Yeah.
It's not one
I get
or
a
the
good
other.
analogy. I think I have an analogy. Like if you go to a restaurant, it's nice when the restaurant serves like hamburgers and hot dogs. You know, you can have both. Like it doesn't need to be. I don't think I get it. The industry does some things, the big evil bike industry, but high pivots have been around for almost since the beginning of mountain bikes. Really, like it's not a new thing. They just kind of had a resurgence as companies started experimenting again. I don't think they're the be all end all. Like I don't think that cross country bikes are going to suddenly come with high pivots, but I do think they make sense, especially for downhill bikes. And it is a different feel on the trail. You know, that the growing axle path does feel different. Some people love it. I mean, especially if you're somewhere, that earlier caller was talking about Moab, like square edge hits, it can feel great where you just plow through stuff. But then, you know, if you want a poppier, livelier bike, you know, I'm generalizing, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that. And sometimes in the corners, it can feel a little strange. So I don't think that we're not going to see a wholesale switch over to high pivot bikes, but I also don't think they're going anywhere because for the people that want them, they can be really fun to ride.
But do you think that there's also an idea of, I know, as Riley mentioned, you know, it's kind of gone through, especially the Commensal really had that sort of zeitgeisty moment with both Supremes, actually, both the V4 and the V5. And it failed to sort of capture the imagination, even though there were high pivot bikes made by them before that. But I think also it depends what the sort of current crop of racetrack is doing and how it goes into different strengths and weaknesses. But if you're going down a ski piste at 80 kilometers an hour, high pivot's probably not a bad bet, you know, like that sort of 2019, 2020 race course.
Yeah. I think the choice
it does
depends
offer-
a lot on where you live. Like you're just saying, like what you like riding, how you like riding. There are too many factors for it to be as simple as the yes or no when it comes to a high pivot or other giant change like that.
But do you think that because, you know, I think, you know, we're joking about the bike industry, et cetera, but I think the caller does touch on a really interesting point that when people think of high pivot, they put it on probably, I'd say, 3 brands to do kind of all the heavy lifting in terms of marketing, in terms of people's understanding, in terms of racing, which is Forbidden, Commensal, and probably Norco. It's like what those guys are doing is what everyone's going to live and die by, similar to maybe how Specialized were with the 29er. And so suddenly it kind of puts them in an interesting place where how well those brands are doing or how well those bikes are viewed or how desired those bikes are, even if they just look ugly one year, it sort of changes everyone's opinion of the whole.
I mean, we saw Trek buy into it too, you know, like the Slash. That was not a surprise. I guess it was kind of a surprise. And we've seen other companies experiment and sometimes things come out and sometimes they don't. But yeah, I think it's cool for longer travel applications. I mean, Dario and I both rode the Norco Optic and found it an interesting bike, but it didn't really seem like the future. You know, it's a 125 mil or 130 bike. It's kind of like, they did it, but like it doesn't really fit into Henry's favorite trail bike category. So yeah, I'm glad they exist, but you can also do other things. Like when the caller was mentioning different suspension setups, and maybe you toss on some sort of like O-chain or something to get that kind of like not hovering. I hate that word. What do we call it? Like a calmness under your feet.
Fluttery.
You know? Fluttery. Just like general, the separation between the bumps and your body. So I like that they exist though.
Just to touch on another thing we spoke about earlier on, I think as well with high pivots is, you know, we're seeing this thing happen with, you know, drivetrain devices where you're separating suspension and drivetrain forces for better suspension feel. But then you do lose some of that quick ratcheting engagement that people like. But if you've got a 1700 points of engagement in your hub on your 1800 gram wheel set, and then with a high pivot, you can sort of get a mixture of both in a way that perhaps you couldn't.
This is true.
Something like an O-chain or going to a 1 degree, tooth ratchet, whatever.
But I think there's something to it. I mean, like again, to go back to like the Slash, like that bike does a really good job with the high pivot. You know, it's like,
or you look at the Deviates, like those have only ever been like favorably reviewed on Pinkbike, and I haven't had the chance to ride one, but it seems like, I don't know, their stuff is a good balance of the variables you get out of a high pivot and a regular bike.
Did it get Bike of the Year one year?
No, I don't think
so.
It might have got a nomination. We had it in the
did
field
really
test
well
a
though
few
in that
years
field
ago.
test.
The Claymore was like a favorite when y'all did the Enduro
and
field
then, like,
test.
The Cavans that I reviewed the Cavans a few years ago now, almost 4 years.
And I have one of those right now.
Yeah,
And-
I think there's ways to do it
yeah.
well. So I think they're here.
Nice.
They're cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you for your question there. And thank you for all the other callers pointing out how bloody confusing we are. And
We'll keep
you know what? It's
confusing
good
you.
to be held to account sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks for you guys for being uncharacteristically prepared. I don't know what to say. I'm blown away. I really, honestly, I'll be telling Brian about this. I'm very impressed.
Gold stars all around.
Yeah.
Thanks, you, the listener, for persevering and getting this far. You've just wasted an hour of your life. Congratulations. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the questions and keep them coming in. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.